In this video, I'm going to show you how to decorate this Cocomelon cake. Hi, it's Karolyn. If you want to learn how to bake and decorate amazing cakes, and I would love for you to join me by hitting subscribe and the bell. So before we get started, I just want to talk real quick about the shirts that I made. And I will put it over here, and it's actually below the video as well. And some people were commenting and saying that I don't have anything larger than a small. And it's just, it's like a technical thing that with spring, and I talked to them and I'm waiting for them to fix it. So if you click one of the products below and it only says small or extra small, just click view on spring. So it takes you directly to the site, and then you can order anything up to, I think, a 2 or a 3X in most of the products. So thank you so much for supporting me for that and ordering your shirts. And I didn't only offer them in smalls. I don't even wear small, so sorry about that. This week I am decorating a Cocomelon cake, and a couple weeks ago I posted a dinosaur cake, and at the end I did a quick voiceover to show you how I decorated the cake, and I got some positive feedback for that. So this video I'm just doing a voiceover for the entire thing. It is sped up. It's not extremely detailed, but I show you how I decorate the entire cake. I'm going to break it up into chapters. That way you can skip around to whatever parts that you would like in case you didn't need to see the whole thing. So let's get into the video. To start, I have a piece of non-skid pad underneath my cutting board so it doesn't slide around when I'm working. I have a couple of X-Acto knives with a sharp blade. I wipe the blade off on a wet paper towel as the fondant starts to stick to it. And my favorite tool, Dresden tool. The ends come to a point, it curves. I love this tool. I always have a needle tool handy. And I'm going to make the face. I measured the face. I measured my cake. I measured the name. You know, you have to measure the cake and make sure that you print everything out the correct size. So I'm going to make the face first. I have the pink fondant, I have black fondant, and white fondant rolled out super thin. There is Tylose powder mixed in all of this fondant that I'm going to use. Sprinkle it in there, knead it, roll it out, let it sit for about 20 minutes so it can stiffen. Your fondant must be stiff using the curved end of my Dresden tool. And I am just tracing the outline of the face. Peel it back, make sure it's transferred. And now I'm just putting marks where all the decorations are going to go on top so I know where to place everything. And cutting it out with my X-Acto knife. And after I cut anything out, I always smooth my cuts. Now getting the black fondant and doing the same thing. I want to press down any marks that I made so it doesn't transfer, and tracing the outside of all the black details and then cutting it out, smoothing it with my fingers. You know the process. Same thing for the little white pieces. These tiny pieces can be a pain in the butt to work with. Now I have a little bit of water and a paintbrush, and I'm just going to get some water on the back of the pieces and stick them down. And this is why I make those little marks in the pink fondant before I cut it out so I know where to place everything. Now I want to put this on the white background, so getting a little bit of water on the back. Make sure you don't get too much water. You don't want it seeping out underneath and getting onto the white fondant, and slowly placing it down, making sure the edges are pressed down. Getting close and just making sure that I'm cutting an even border the entire way around and smoothing my cuts like always. Now I need to get the little rosy cheeks, so I have some petal dust and a brush, and it's just like putting on makeup. Tapping it in the lid. This stuff transfers really well, so it's better to start with less and then add more. Now I'm going to store it. This is going on a 6-inch cake. I have a 6-inch cake dummy, and I wanted to dry with a curve, so I'm just going to dry it on here. There's pins underneath so it doesn't roll around. Now I have all colors of the rainbow rolled out, really thin, mixed with Tylose powder. I'm doing the same thing with the letters. I'm cutting the inside of the letters out first. It's always better to cut the inside out before you cut the entire letter out. It's just easier. And I'm doing that for all the letters. So I'm going to trace, cut, smooth my cuts. And I'm doing red, orange, yellow, and green. And now I want to put them on a white background. So again, getting some water on the back, and I have the name printed out close so I can see the placement of the letters. The A is pretty close next to the first A. The L is a little higher than the second A. You know, I'm just trying to make it look like how it's printed. And again, getting real close, cutting out an even border the entire way around. And then smoothing my cuts like always. Now I don't have anywhere to store this, so I'm going to keep it in a plastic bag so it doesn't dry out. And now I want to make the number. So I have this little strip cutter. I'm going to press it all the way down to cut it out. Take a small rolling pin to really press the fondant down so it cuts. You know, you want clean cuts on here. And then tap it down and do that for all the colors, getting a bunch of different colored stripes. Once that's done, I take a piece of white fondant. I have this #1 patchwork cutter. If you don't have a patchwork cutter, you could print out a #1 like I did with the name and then trace the #1, you know, but I just use this patchwork cutter, and I can link this below or try to find it. I'm making a slight impression so I know where to put all the colored stripes, get a little bit of water on, and now I'm just going to put it in rainbow order, making sure that the strip underneath is touching the strip above so there's no spaces, and do that all the way down to the bottom. Then take my cutter, and I'm just pressing down to make the impression. It's not long enough to make a deep cut. And again, if you had a #1 that you printed out, take a needle tool and poke around the edge so you can get the outline. And just cutting it out. Smoothing my cuts, and I want a white background. Again, rolled out the fondant thin, get a little bit of water on the back. Do you see there's a pattern here, you know? Excuse my big head. Trace, cut, smooth your cuts. You know, that's basically how I do all of my cakes. I want this to dry flat, so I'm putting it on a cutting board, set it aside. Now I'm making my Karolyns. So now I've been cutting a straight line down and then 2 angled lines on the sides, wrap it around my Dresden tool, set it aside. Your fondant must have Tyler's powder in it for this to work. You're doing the same thing again, straight line, squiggly lines on either side so they end in a point. Wrapping it around the Dresden tool, setting it aside. I have a whole crap load of them on the cutting board so they can dry. Rolling out the border, so roll it into a log. This is for the bottom border. Rolling it out really long. I have this ribbon cutter. You can have the nubbin down or the nubbin up like Chandler. Just decide how wide you want your ribbon to be, and then just cutting a strip, smoothing your cuts. My cake is just out of the refrigerator. I'm marking the front, wipe the board. I hate when my boards are dirty. Get a little bit of piping gel all around the bottom perimeter. And putting the border on, so just making sure that it is touching the cake down at the board where it overlaps. Cut, remove the back piece, push it together for a perfect seam. Take a little palette knife, and that looks weird. That's like super sped up, so let me slow that down. I'm just pressing it down just to make sure that it's even and it's pressed down against the cake board. Now I want to measure how long do I need my strips to be. So it was, I don't know, was that like 8 inches? I put that back in the fridge. Rolling out some more green fondant. So I want to make sure I roll this out tall enough so I can go up the side of the cake and then up on top and then roll it out long. So I roll it wide, then long, figure out how wide I want my strips to be, and cut out a bunch of strips. And it's annoying when it sticks. Now I always have cake box lids that I save for stuff like this, so I can transfer these onto here. And smoothing all my cuts like always. I have a bunch of these. I have a yardstick that I cut in half, and I just like to straighten all of my strips. That way they're perfectly straight. So I just rub them up and down, making sure they're straight. I'm cutting the bottom off of all of them, so I have a straight edge on the bottom. Now flip it over using some Crisco, because Crisco is very forgiving, painting the entire back of the strip and marking the front of my cake. Hold it with my right hand, and with my left hand I'm pushing it down so it's going straight up the cake. and then push it in the middle. See, Crisco is forgiving. I can pull it off and put it back on, and it's going to stick, and it's not going to mess up the cake. This cake is out of the refrigerator. The icing is solid. Now I have a little spacer. So this is a piece of ribbon that I just cut a little piece off. That's the same width as the ribbon that I'm using. And that way, I'm going to have all of the strips the same distance apart. So I could peel off that little spacer, put it on the other side, and do the same thing, getting Crisco on the back, holding it straight. Make sure it goes straight up the cake, and then put it down. Remove the spacer. All right, so I like to start in the front and work my way to the back. So that way, when I'm in the back right here, it's not perfect. It's a little wider of a space, but that's okay. I'm using my palette knife to straighten out any of the lines, and it looks pretty. So now I have a circle cutter, and I want to make a little impression here because I have to get rid of all that fondant on the top. So that one looks pretty good. I'm going to press it down to make the impression, and then get my X-Acto knife and cut along that line that I made. And I can remove all this fondant because it has Crisco on it and it's not sticky. Now making the antenna part, roll out fondant really thick, pink fondant, and then I have a circle cutter that's wider than that piece, that hole on the top. Get a piece of plastic, tighten it, and press down. Now I'm going to get a rounded cut. And now I'm refining it to make it come up, like angle up a little bit, just so it looks a little better. And I want to mix some Tylose in the purple. It was a little soft from adding the coloring. So just adding a little bit of Tylose, knead it in, let it sit, and then I'm ready to make the antenna. So rolling it in a ball, roll it into a log, roll it down on the countertop to lengthen it, and do the same thing for the other piece. And the antenna in the Cocomelon, one goes over to the left, the other goes over to the right. So I'm cutting the bottom off. See how it'll fit on there since I curved the bottom, and then I'm cutting a piece off at the top and rolling this into a little ball, and that's going to be the top part of the antenna. Right, so now we want to make the other one, cutting that off so it sits flush, and making the other ball. I want to make sure the balls are the same size. Let's remove a little bit of that. And this part of the antenna goes straight across and then lifts up, curves over to the right. Cutting this one on an angle, that way the ball fits onto the antenna. Perfect. And I want to make this a little bit shorter. I felt like that was a little too long. Now I'll transfer this onto a little cutting board. I want to get a skewer in there. I wet the end of the skewer. I'm twisting it. I'm not just jamming it in there. So I'm kind of screwing it in, making sure that it's not sticking out, and then getting rid of the finger marks that I created. And putting it back down on the cutting board. Now I want to get a skewer in here. I can't stick it straight up because you're going to be able to see the skewer. It's got to be in on an angle. So you want it to go in the bottom where it's going to touch that pink piece. And again, twisting it, not just jamming it in there. This fondant is still soft, so I'm just going to have to make sure that there's no finger marks or anything in it. Now I want the blue pieces to stick without falling off, so I have a toothpick, cutting it with my snips. And again, just going to insert half of the toothpick into one end and get a little bit of water on there so the blue piece will stick to it, and then putting the ball on here. This blue fondant is still a little soft, so the ball flattened out a little bit, which kind of annoys me, but whatever. I'm trying to work it back into the right shape, and do the same thing for the other one. Half the toothpick goes in, get a little water on it, and put the blue piece. Sorry, I'm a little out of frame on this one. And just reshaping it, setting it aside on this board to dry. So I measured the height of my cake. I printed out these edible images, made sure they were as tall as I wanted them to be. I have a tutorial showing you in detail how I print edible images and everything, and I will link that below. So I'm cutting all these pieces out. I like to have a little white border now. I just feel like it looks better. So cutting a little white border for all of the characters and the decorations. Just have to be really careful that you get an even border the whole way around. And again, I will link my videos below on where I go into detail on how I use edible images. I have thin white fondant rolled out. It has Tylose powder mixed in with it. And I have a little bit of piping gel and a paper towel and put the images upside down on the paper towel. And I want to get some piping gel on my paintbrush. Hold it down. You don't want these images to shift. So I'm getting piping gel all on the back, going off of the edges, making sure there's edges. Push it down, lift my finger, and then paint the rest. Don't want the image to shift as you're doing this. So laying this down gently on the fondant, making sure the edges are all pressed down, and doing the same for the other pieces, making sure I get to the edges and carefully moving around so I don't shift the image. Then when I'm cutting them out, I'm just going around the perimeter and using the white border as a guide. Take it out, smooth my cuts. You guys know the process. Every time I cut anything out of fondant, just set that aside and do the same thing for all the characters and smoothing them out. I'm setting these aside on another cutting board. I want them to dry flat, so I just want to set them aside. I ended up putting this pink piece in a bag because I didn't want it to dry super hard. These got a little flat on the back, but that's okay. I have my cake just out of the refrigerator. I'm going to fill in this void here, and then that was just regular buttercream icing. Then I'm going to put that piece on top and get a little bit of piping gel where it's going to touch the pink piece. Now, this is where it gets a little tricky. I have to angle these in here. So I try it a couple times. Nope, that doesn't work. They're too close together. Let me try it again. And let's push it down. Nope, that doesn't work. It's too close together. And let's try it again. So, you just got to figure out how to get it in so it looks right and stands up straight. Now, I want to put the face on. No, I don't want to put the face on yet because I have to put the name on to make sure I have enough room. So the name's in the bag. Let me get that out of there. And I want to get a little bit of piping gel on the back so it will stick. And put that at the very bottom, making sure that it's centered. And now I'll put the face on. So I'm getting piping gel around the edges. That way, I don't want to put icing around the edges because it could seep out. Piping gel will stick without being messy. And then I'll fill in the middle with a little bit of icing in an icing bag. So easy to just squeeze it on there, stick it against there, make sure that it's center. Now the little ladybug goes on the left side, so getting a little piping gel behind it where it's going to touch and then gently pushing that on. Hold it into place for a second for it to stick, and there you go. My board is a little dirty again. I hate a dirty board. Now, this number 1, I want it to stick out. I don't want to put it against the cake. I want you to be able to see it from the front. So just those 2 parts are going to be touching the cake. So that's where I want to get a little bit of icing behind it. Or you can use piping gel, whatever you'd like. But just sticking it on there. And this Cocomelon, go put that there. That way it'll hide that little imperfection in the bottom of the pink part. So getting some icing on the back and sticking it there. So you're just trying to find where these little decorations look the best. I'm just holding it up against the cake, get a little bit of icing behind it where it's going to touch the cake, and then press it back down, making sure I can't see any icing oozing out from behind. This guy, where am I going to put him? That looks stupid. That looks stupid. I don't like it. Maybe there. Maybe I'll do there. Let's hold him there for a second and see. This girl, she looks adorable over there. Maybe I'll put her there. Let's see. This guy, I guess he has to go over here. So this is what I do. I just hold him up against the cake, say, that looks pretty good. Get a little bit of icing behind him and put him on there. I don't want him against the cake. I kind of want you to be able to see him. So I'm pulling him out on the one side and just have him pressed against the cake on the left side. Same thing for this girl. She would look stupid up there, so she's going to be behind him. Get a little bit of icing on the back and put her down. And same thing for the stars. I'll put a star here, a star here. Adorable. Now, for these, now I'm going to have to do a skewer with some chocolate on the back. So putting the skewer behind it, I just want to see the correct placement. So it has to go straight here, behind that leg. So flip it over and make sure I know where the skewers are supposed to be. I have some melted candy melts, and I'm just getting a little bit of chocolate on the back. Press it down. Now you want to make this part neat. So I'm just tapping a little bit of icing, not icing, chocolate on here, and then just brushing it over it, over the stick, just to make sure it looks nice and smooth. You don't want it to look chunky because it's going to look ugly from the back. Then I'm going to set these in the refrigerator for about 10 minutes so the chocolate can solidify. I'm going to wrap the board with a ribbon, so cutting it to the correct length, get a little bit of disappearing purple non-toxic glue on the board and on the back of the ribbon, and putting it around the board, and then where it overlaps, just getting a little more glue and pressing it against the board one more time for good measure. Now I have these out of the fridge and I can stick these down into the top of the cake where I feel like they will look the best. And for the final touch, I'm going to get the curlies on. So get a little bit of piping gel on a brush, get it behind the curly, put it down on the board, on the cake, you know, wherever I feel like it looks the best. And I want to patch this little crack that formed in here. So I have some purple buttercream icing to match. And I'm just spackling that little crack shut. So that way you can't really tell that I broke it a little bit there. And there is the cake. So there you go. There is the adorable Cocomelon cake. Now, I know I didn't go into very much detail with that. However, I do have videos, detailed videos. I think I just spit. Explaining how I make the stripe number, how I do names. You know, there's a lot of videos that I have, and I will link them below if you wanted to go into further detail on how I make these decorations. Now, this cake is 3-layer 6-inch cake, and it feeds like 15 to 18, I would say. And I do have a video. I have videos. I have a video on different size pans that I use to get different heights and different servings for just, I don't know why I can't talk. That video explains how I get different servings out of using different size pans, and I will link that below as well. But I wanted to make this a 3-layer cake, so it was a little taller, so you could see I could fit the name and the face. If I only made it a 2-layer, if I did a 2-layer torted cake, it would have only been 5 inches rather than, I think it was like 7 inches tall or something like that. So that's why I like to sometimes mess with the height of my tiers so I have more space to decorate. And side note, I sent a picture to Ayla's mom, and then she texted me back like a half hour later. She's like, she's turning 2. Oops. So this is why I always text pictures to people the day before they pick it up, so I have time to fix it. So here's the actual cake that I gave her. It has the 2 on it, and I did the same thing. I rolled out the white fondant. I had to roll out, I was so annoyed. I had to re-roll out all those colors, put the strips on, cut it out, put it on the background, and you know, it was like another half hour out of my day, but at least I sent her the picture before, so I was able to fix it in time. And did you guys like this? So this was just an entire video of a quick synopsis of how I decorated a cake and not really going into full detail. I know I get a lot of comments of people liking the detailed videos, so I probably won't do these all the time. However, let me know if this is a type of video that you like to see, and I will make sure that I make it more often. So I think that's it. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. And you can follow me on my social media, and I have my website, and it's listed in the description below as well. If you want to stick around, you can watch these 2 videos next and hit subscribe and the bell if you haven't already. Please like this video if you liked it. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, it's cake. Have fun. I will see you on the next one. Bye.